One of the nation's leading pro-life organizations has a new name. Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America was unveiled today. It replaces the name Susan B. Anthony List. The group was founded in 1992. It says the change reflects its evolution into a political and policy entity with more than 1 million members. Meantime, President Joe Biden says Americans should celebrate those who are part of the so-called LGBTQ community. In a proclamation published yesterday, the president dedicated June as Pride Month. He also condemned states that do not promote the LGBT agenda, saying, quote, an onslaught of dangerous anti-LGBTQI plus legislation has been introduced and passed in states across the country, targeting transgender children and their parents and interfering with their access to health care. Joining us now is Jay Richards, Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Jay, great to see you. Thanks so much for coming on. First off, I want to get your thoughts on the president's proclamation and in particular that remark about some states' so-called dangerous legislation.
Well, the president's being consistent with what he told us at the end of last year when the White House released its national strategy on so-called gender equity and equality. They said loud and clearly that the gender ideology was going to be a major part of his administration, and he's fulfilling that pledge. Of course, Pride Month has already been declared by the LGBT activists for years, but he's made clear that at least under his administration, this is going to be a major concern. And his attacks on states in particular are quite telling, because he's talking about laws in states like Florida, which simply demand transparency for parents, so parents know what their kids are being taught, or procedures that actually can lead to sterilization of children. And so the idea that this is prohibiting or preventing kids from getting health care is, I would say, at the very least, a highly biased way of describing what's really happening.
Yeah, and Jay, there are reports that the Biden administration could actually eliminate school lunch funding from schools that don't comply with things like transgender bathroom policies. In other words, allowing a biological boy who identifies as a girl to use the bathroom of their choice. What more do you know about that?
Well, I mean, this is exactly how the federal government controls states, because, of course, under our Constitution, the states are in charge of education and the localities. But as anyone knows that follows this, the federal government gives various funds that they take from taxing states and individual citizens back to the states. And so this is how the federal government can control what happens all the way down to local school boards, is by at least threatening to withhold, in this case, actual food for poor kids in public schools. I mean, I think this shows the degree to which this administration is absolutely committed to pushing gender ideology, not just in the culture at large, but all the way down into public elementary school classrooms.
Yeah, and Jay, why do you think that is? I mean, why is there this push towards transgenderism in our society and from the Biden administration? What's behind it?
Well, honestly, it's this sort of the latest turn of the sexual revolution. Same-sex marriage, at least as a political debate in the short term, was sort of settled in 2015 with the famous Supreme Court case of Obergefell. The activists on the other side, they didn't sort of just retire, though. They decided, okay, what can we focus on now? And they decided to focus on the transgender issue. Of course, it's quite different than the sexual orientation question, because gender ideology, it actually denies sexual biology. It denies that there are males and females, and it insists that instead we all have this private, subjective, so-called gender identity. And so I think most Americans, that we sense there's something wrong, but may not realize just how radical this ideology is. I honestly don't think Biden probably himself has done much thinking about this, but the activists in his administration are clearly calling the shots, at least with this one.
Yeah, before we run out of time here, I really want to ask you this question. Leah Thomas, as you know, the swimmer from the University of Pennsylvania, a biological male who identifies as a female, gave her first public interview yesterday to ABC News. And in it, Leah said she didn't transition to have an advantage, but to be happy. I want to get your thoughts on that, especially as we approach the 50-year anniversary of Title IX.
Well, Title IX is, of course, the guarantee under the Civil Rights Act. It was an amendment from 1972 that basically gave rise to the profusion of women's sports in high school and college. Leah Thomas, the question with Leah Thomas is not what Thomas's motivation is. The question is whether it's fair. There's a reason that we separate male and female sports, especially in college. And if biological males can just take a few months of estrogen and then compete against females, we completely dismantle the very logic for having female sports in the first place. I think Leah Thomas, because he's so obviously a male, is serving actually to alert the American public to what exactly is going on.
Okay, we're going to leave it right there. Jay, thanks as always for your time and analysis. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.